Welcome to the Ask the Expert Show with local celebrity host Steve-O. Sit back each week while Steve-O educates you with live in-studio experts, such as lawyers, doctors, home improvement, and financial experts in their field. Call in and have your questions answered each week at 888-565-1470. Now, here is Steve-O with today's expert in their field.
Hey, today I've got to pat myself on the back. We've got a new show today, and I'm telling you, this law firm that's going to be on today's show, the first half hour, is probably one of the finest tax relief, tax resolution law firms in the country, and I'm going to tell you how I discovered them, and I'm going to take all the credit. So first, let me welcome you to one of the senior partners of Gregory Tax Resolution, Deborah Gregory. Hi, Deborah.
Hi, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm good. This is your first show.
It is. We're excited. I'm here with Garrett as well.
Oh, okay. I've got both of you then. Well, I'm going to share, and I don't even know if I told you about this, but I get so many emails, and I saw an email that came in from a Deborah Gregory, and for some reason, I don't even know why, I read it. It was the most interesting educational information on tax resolution that I've ever read in my life. And all of a sudden, I would get like a new one every maybe week, and each one was better than the next. And I said, someone who is this good at educating on a subject that's kind of a downer subject, I got to have them as part of our show. And it just so happened we have gotten so many of our listeners asking, can you do something about taxes? We found the best. It's Gregory Tax Resolution. And first of all, tell us about how you started your practice.
Well, first of all, thank you for that. I'm glad our marketing is working.
Yes, it is.
So Garrett and I were both senior attorneys for the IRS. We worked there for collectively over 24 years. And, we really saw firsthand the effects that IRS collections could have on families and businesses. And obviously at that point in time, there was nothing really we could do about it. So we decided to start a tax resolution firm to help taxpayers resolve their issues with the IRS.
Because they are, without a doubt, probably the best at collecting money probably in all of America.
Oh, absolutely. They're the most powerful creditor in the world. They can do a number of really bad things.
Well, today, and you're going to be with us every month, we're going to, and surely if either you have a tax problem, maybe you're hiding those envelopes in the drawer, hoping they'll go away, or maybe you have a relative or a friend, you want to make sure they listen to today's show. We're on 95.3 FM and 1470 AM. So let's just jump into it. And I just kind of got it started by the people that throw those letters from the IRS into the drawer, hoping they'll disappear.
Right. Yeah, that's one of the worst things you can do is ignore the IRS. As unpleasant as it may be to receive that in your mailbox, and as tempting as it is to just throw it away and pull the ostrich routine and bury your head in the sand, that's the worst thing you can do. Because once they send you a letter, that means the gears are in motion and the clock has started, and you've got a lot of time-sensitive response parameters with the IRS that if you let them lapse, all of a sudden your options become fewer and fewer the further down the road those things go. And so, similarly, there's the fewer options we as a practitioner representing you, it's the less good or less options we can explore for you in your case. So certainly the first and foremost thing, because we get clients all the time, or prospective clients that will come into our office, and I know, Deborah, you've had this too. It's not uncommon. I've had people literally walk in with a box full of unopened IRS letters. And they said, I scheduled this appointment with you because I know I owe some taxes. I haven't filed a few returns, but I don't exactly know what's going on, because that's my first question. Hey, what's going on? Tell me what's happening. And they'll say, I don't really know, but here's a bunch of letters. And I'll sit there for 30 minutes opening letters and reading them while they just sort of sit there and stare at me. And, so it's a human nature to want to resist this and not address it. But all too often I'm opening these letters and sure enough, there was our appeals. That's come and gone. We can't do that. Here's our opportunity to go to tax court. That's come and gone. We don't have that opportunity. So there's, it's sad when I see that, but we really encourage people to get a notice from the IRS.
They don't like to be ignored, do they, Gary?
I'm sorry, what's that?
They don't like to be ignored.
No, and they'll do it for a while because they have to follow some due process hurdles. They have to give taxpayers every opportunity to approach them and make this right. But at some point, once they've satisfied all of their due process requirements, that's when the big guns come out. That's when they start freezing bank accounts, levying wages, accounts receivable of businesses, things like that really put you behind the 8 ball.
Well, let me ask you, what if someone gets a call from the IRS and they tell them they're about to be arrested? Is that real?
Yeah, we get these calls a couple times a week. My own father even called me a few months back with this happening. No, these are scams. Now, I have to put a slight caveat to that, but generally speaking, the IRS doesn't reach out to you by phone unless you've already established a relationship with them and been in contact with them. But a first contact is almost never going to be by phone. They may stop by and visit you in person, but most often it's a letter or an in-person visit. It's not going to be a telephone call. I put a slight caveat, so that's a scam. If anybody calls and says, hey, we're going to arrest you or something like that, that's definitely not the IRS. Now, I put a slight caveat. The IRS is farming some of their collection activities out to third-party private debt collectors, which is a very scary thing, should be for everybody, because we don't know what that's going to look like. We don't know how they're going to act. Of course, the government's going to slap a bunch of restrictions on them, but by the time this trickles down to their $10 an hour employees making phone calls, we don't know how they're going to act and what they're going to say on the phone. So, I do have to put that slight caveat.
Okay. So now, what if someone's got unfiled returns? Doesn't that put them in kind of a strange position if they start getting letters from the IRS? Because the IRS is going to want them to produce. And if they've got unfiled returns, what do they do?
So if you're in a situation where you have unfiled returns, the best course of action, of course, is to work with your tax preparer and get those returns done. Generally, the IRS is going to request that you go back 6 years. And what happens when you don't file a return, the IRS is going to create a return under their substitute for return procedures, and it's never in your best interest that they do that because they're just going to give you the standard deduction. They're not going to give you any of your other credits or expenses, especially if you're a Schedule C taxpayer, that you might otherwise be entitled to. So they're going to give you the bare minimum, and the liability will more than likely be higher than what it truly would be if you would just file an original return. So you do have the opportunity to go back and file those returns so that you can figure out really what the correct liability is, and then at that point, you can work with the IRS in getting into a resolution strategy.
And I'll piggyback on that a little bit.
Okay.
Another bad thing about unfiled returns is anytime you have an unfiled return that has a liability, there's a liability associated, you're going to get dinged with a 25% penalty on the amount owed of tax for late filing. And that 25% accrues, but it accrues quickly at a rate of 5% a month that you're late until it caps at the end of 5 months at 25%. So we tell people all the time, hey, I know you're scared because you're about to file this return and it's going to owe money that you don't have. So a lot of people think, ooh, I'll just not file it and I'll kind of hide for a while. Well, bad idea, because they're going to catch up to you. You're better off filing it and just not paying, but at least you avoid a 25% penalty by doing so.
Now, let's say, let me take this right here. A person hires your firm. Can you do anything about that 5% if they haven't filed, or the 25%? Can you help them at all in that capacity?
Sometimes. I'll
Okay.
give you a perfect lawyer answer. Maybe. It depends on the circumstances. But yes, under certain circumstances, penalties can be what we call abated or wiped away. Generally speaking, it's a tough legal standard. You have to show that there was reasonable cause for why you filed late or why you're paying late. whatever's giving rise to the penalty. And that's a tough legal standard. That's not just pretty please. I mean, or I didn't have the money at the time of filing. The IRS, that's not going to move the IRS much. It's got to be, I was in a coma, for 6 months and I couldn't file my return on time, something like that. It's going to be really compelling. But then there are other circumstances. For example, if you're going along and you've been just the exemplary taxpayer, and then all of a sudden we go along and we hit a bump in the road one year, and the previous 10, 15 years you've been clean as a whistle. A lot of times we can approach the IRS and ask them to abate the penalties for that first year, and they will be willing to do so.
So let me give you an example, or maybe you can give me one. What is the longest someone has ever gone who's retained you without filing for taxes?
Geez, the longest one I've ever had, their last filing was 1997, and they hired me last year. But I think you had one that was even longer.
Can you brag on yourself? Tell me what you were able to do for them.
Well, it's like Deborah
Not a lot.
Like Deborah mentioned earlier, the main thing working on our favor for someone who's been able to dance between the raindrops for that long is, at some point the IRS, look, it's a systemic problem with the IRS is they're wildly overloaded and they're way understaffed for the job that they're trying to perform. So they really cut it off at 6 years. They're gonna stand on today and they're gonna look back 6 years, and that's all they want to talk about. They're gonna see this guy hadn't filed for 20 years, but they're really gonna just wipe the rest of it away. They're just gonna write it off and say, okay, go back 6 years. We want to see those tax returns, whatever he owes for that amount. That's what we're going to try to collect.
And then now, so this person has to, I guess, reconstruct his last 6 years?
Correct. If they can, sometimes we have clients that say, you know what, I just can't do it. We'll live with the substitute for return, the tax calculated by the IRS on my behalf. We'll just live with that. We have to because I don't have any. They kind of throw up their hands, or they just don't have any documents. And in that case, okay, we just have to live with whatever the IRS has determined our tax liability to be and move forward into the collection stage of the engagement with that. And now the question becomes not how much or do you owe tax, it's how much can you pay us? That's the question we're trying to answer in a collections case.
So we're going to go to break in just a minute, and we come back. I think we need to be real upfront with people what the IRS can do, because there's a lot of things that they can do. Unless they hire a company like yours, a firm like yours. First of all, let me give everybody your phone number. It's 866-861-3640. Can you give us, you got a great website. Give everybody your website address.
Our website is GregoryTaxLaw.com, or you can reach out to us on Facebook as well.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, we're going to go to break again. Their phone number, 866-861-3640. We're going to go to break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the things the IRS can do to you. We'll be right back.
Gregory Tax Resolution Services, PLLC, is a national tax resolution firm. They help clients worldwide resolve their tax issues with the IRS. Gregory Tax Resolution Services, PLCC, was co-founded by two former IRS attorneys, Garrett and Deborah Gregory. They worked for the IRS for over 24 years, combined as senior IRS tax attorneys. While working for the IRS, they witnessed firsthand the devastating effects that the IRS collections had on families and small businesses. While working for the IRS, there was nothing they could do. So this husband and wife team started their own tax resolution firm to help people just like you. The IRS is the most powerful creditor in the world. The IRS can levy your bank account, garnish your wages, seize your assets, revoke your passport, and shut down your business. These are serious issues that require representation. Call Gregory Tax Resolution Services at 888-346-5470 for a free confidential consultation with former IRS attorney Garrett or Deborah Gregory. Don't fight the IRS alone. Let former IRS insiders fight for you.
And we are back. We're here with the Gregory Tax Resolution Company, Deborah and Garrett. Wow, Deborah was my ex-wife and Garrett's my son, so I could never forget these names. Now, and then you have an office here in South Florida, is that correct?
Right. We have an office in Sarasota, and then our headquarters are in Dallas.
Right. Now, this, you could actually, if you've got someone has a relative in New York or actually any state in the country, you can handle this for them because you can do this over the phone. Is that correct?
Correct. We have clients worldwide, and we can work with folks, in any state. And
Yeah, I believe at last count we were 22 states and 7 different countries.
Well, what I like about you two is you've been on the other side. And again, I get your letters all the time. And I think you both should have been teachers when it comes to IRS because they're easy to understand. And I would think that a person that has a tax problem has a hard time sleeping every night. Would you say?
Oh, yes, absolutely. We hear that a lot from our clients.
Yeah, we jokingly refer to ourselves more as sleep doctors than
I totally understand that. Now, people, we start off the show talking about the people who hide those letters from the IRS in the drawers. Let me tell you, if you wait a long time before you hire a company like Gregory Tax Resolutions, here's what's going to happen. Tell everybody what the IRS can do.
Well, like we talked about the first thing, if you haven't filed a tax return, they will determine the tax amount and assess it against you so that they'll have a collection, avenue. But either way, once they have established that you owe them money, probably the most effective tool they have in their toolbox is what we call a tax levy. And that's a term that can take several forms. They can, it can involve freezing bank accounts, garnishing wages. If it's on a business, they can go after your accounts receivable. So it's really, believe it or not meant to be a collection tool. It's really meant to be a punch in the stomach to get you to sit down with the IRS, quit ignoring them, and get on a more workable, permanent solution to resolve this IRS debt.
Well, listen, if a person is having tax problems and they secure your firm, they no longer have to talk to the IRS anymore. Is that correct?
Right. That's one of the major benefits. And as a matter of fact, we make our clients basically promise they're not going to talk to the IRS without us present. They tend to do more damage than good, not because they're not trying hard or not smart people, but it's just this is a whole different world and it's a whole different language. And you can say a lot of things and think, wow, I'm really doing a good job for myself, and you're hanging yourself and you don't really know it. Plus, you just want to go do what you do, raise your kids, do your job. You don't want to wrestle with this alligator on your own. So we kind of take it off your plate and handle it soup to nuts. Your only involvement is getting us the information we need to best represent you.
So if they hire you, they retain you, and the IRS calls them, they can just have them call you.
Right. And even prior to that, what we do is we obtain Form 2848, which is a representative form of the IRS. We file that with the IRS. And at that time, once that gets processed by the IRS, they're not allowed to contact you directly. They'll send any letters they send both to us and to the client, but direct contact is only supposed to occur with the representative on record.
We have a lot of business owners that listen to the show. People are coming home from work now. Let's talk about businesses because they get themselves in a lot of trouble also. So
yes, they do.
Tell us some of the things you do for businesses.
Well, I mean, we do a lot of the same things that we do for our individual clients, represent them before the IRS and work out a resolution strategy. What we see in small businesses is they kind of get behind in the 941 taxes, which is the employment taxes. And that is the one tax that the IRS takes most seriously. And they will be very aggressive when pursuing 941 cases. They can shut down the business. They will go after the accounts receivable. They will show up to the business unannounced. So if you're a small business owner and you start kind of getting behind in 941 taxes, I definitely recommend working with a firm that has experience dealing with the IRS for these types of cases. because we represent a lot of small business owners, and things happen in the business, and they just get a little bit behind on paying in the 941 tax, and then it snowballs, and then it's a real big problem.
Yeah, I can imagine that snowballing. It's really important for a business to do the best you can keeping up, but what I wanted to make sure people realize that you can represent a business owner.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and we do a great many of them, because those cases really become very involved, and we're fighting a war on a lot of fronts. Because like Deborah said, you get behind on the 941 taxes, you're basically running your business on the government's and your employees' money. You're using their withholding, you're using government tax money to fund your business. They call it pyramiding, and that's when they'll come shut you down. But you have the business aspect of it. But of course, Congress was smart enough to realize, well, hey, this is a business level tax. So if you, the business owner, might think, hey, I'll just shut down my business, open up down the street as ABC Inc., and sorry, IRS, I've gotten rid of the obligation. Well, it's not so easy. The IRS has the ability to assert what's called a trust fund recovery penalty, which takes about 70% or the employee matching portion of that employee tax and pin it on the business owners or the principals of the business personally. So it's going to follow you around wherever you go, or whatever business you own or operate or shut down becomes irrelevant. So now and even if the business is still up and running, the IRS will do this. So now we're fighting a personal collection case that they've just pinned on you individually, as well as the broader case, which is against the business. So now we have to do two sets of financials and, all that, sometimes even two different collection officers, believe it or not. So it can really become a complicated situation. But yeah, we've handled a bunch of those, and there is a light at the end of the tunnel. We can get you to resolution. But again, you've just got to work with people who know what they're talking about and have been down that road before.
Well, the phone number for Gregory Tax Resolution is 866-861-3640. Let me give it to you again, 866-861-3640. Now, I spend a lot of time on my computer, on the internet, and I always see something coming up about pennies on the dollar. Is that really true?
Well, what they're talking about there is the offer and compromise program, and that's the program where you agree to pay less than you owe based on your ability to pay. What those ads really don't tell you is that it's not a used car lot sales negotiation. It is a numbers-driven calculation based on your ability to pay, and the IRS is going to look at your income, your expenses, and your net equity and assets in making that determination. We run the same numbers in our firm in figuring out whether or not an offer and compromise is the best resolution strategy. We have been very successful in our offer and compromises that we have submitted, and I think it's in large part because of our experience, but also we understand that it does not work in every single case. It's really a numbers-driven calculation. Sometimes, for example, equity in a home will mess up the calculation, and we won't be able to submit an offer because it won't work. But it is purely numbers-driven. It's not, some haggling that goes on back and forth with the IRS. Can you get pennies on the dollars? Yes, but it is in very specific cases that have the right facts associated with it, and of course the right numbers that work for that calculation. So, my advice when talking to folks is, if it sounds too good to be true,
yes,
it probably is. If someone's telling you over the phone that you qualify for an offer and compromise without doing a full financial statement, that's disingenuous.
Okay. I always like to end the show with, we educated the people a lot today, and we're going to do it again next month. But tell me why I should hire you.
Well, I think probably the first and foremost reason is our experience within the IRS. That sets us apart from most other firms and companies that do this type of work, simply because, a lot of the work we do, especially on the collection side, really isn't tax law so much as it is IRS procedures. Because by now the tax law is already paid out. Okay, you owe the tax, so we're really not in the weeds of the tax code. What we're really dealing with at this point is IRS procedures, how they go about now collecting the money that you on the books owe them, and knowing how that animal operates, and what our options are, what they can do, what they can't do, what we can do to try to steer the transaction as much as possible. That has really been invaluable to a lot of our clients, because we in our team and our firm, I think we have some other former IRS employees in our firm as well, and I think collectively have 75 years of experience within the IRS. So we have a pretty good understanding of how the IRS operates, and that sets us apart from other firms. That anybody can read the books,
right,
study up on tax law, but until you've really walked the halls and lived life as an employee of the Internal Revenue Service, it's hard to really understand those rules and procedures as well as we do.
Well, it's very obvious you know what you're talking about. I love the fact that you have actually worked for the IRS, so you've been on the other side of the table. I think it's wonderful. We are so lucky to have Gregory Tax Resolution as our expert in tax relief, and you're going to be with us again next month. Let me give everybody the phone number again. Write this down, 866-861-3640. That's 866-861-3640. Hey, Deborah, give us your website again.
It's GregoryTaxLaw.com, or you can go to our Facebook page at Gregory Tax Resolution Services.
And how do they get on your mailing list to get all that great information?
If they go to the website, we offer a free report, the top 5 things you need to know if you owe the IRS back taxes, and you'll get on our list and get our newsletter, which is for educational purposes, and really we just want to educate folks on the process. Listen,
if you want to get a good night's sleep, stop trying to handle this yourself. They're a lot better. The IRS is so much better than you. You need to have someone to represent you. Gregory Tax Resolution. They're going to be with us every month. And guys, thank you so much for coming on today. I can't wait to do the show again with you next month.
Well, thank you for having us.
The pleasure is ours.
Thanks. And we're going to go to break now, and when we come back, we're going to talk about all this horrible, bad weather we've had, and now it's time to go to the insurance companies. We're going to show you how not to do this yourself and get a lot more money. We'll be right back.
Gregory Tax Resolution Services, PLLC, is a national tax resolution firm. They help clients worldwide resolve their tax issues with the IRS. Gregory Tax Resolution Services, PLCC, was co-founded by 2 former IRS attorneys, Garrett and Deborah Gregory. They worked for the IRS for over 24 years, combined as senior IRS tax attorneys. While working for the IRS, they witnessed firsthand the devastating effects that the IRS collections had on families and small businesses. While working for the IRS, there was nothing they could do. So this husband and wife team started their own tax resolution firm to help people just like you. The IRS is the most powerful creditor in the world. The IRS can levy your bank account, garnish your wages, seize your assets, revoke your passport, and shut down your business. These are serious issues that require representation. Call Gregory Tax Resolution Services at 888-346-5470 for a free confidential